Hello, boys and girls. It's me again. And for the next few minutes, we are going to have a little fun with math and science. Because at least the news reports say that many of you are having a little trouble with these subjects in school. And statistics had said that many, even graduating from college, were having these problems even before a pandemic. At least I have found, while it is a big crowd pleaser in an argument to turn on your opponent and say, do the math, it tends to sound far more authoritative when the math actually goes the way that it went in your head. And you'd be surprised exactly how many kids miss that on the test. So, where to begin? How about this? According to U.S. News and World Report, public school students in Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain, Virginia, and Maine also experienced some of the biggest grade subject combination score drops in math and English during the pandemic. And Virginia, the 7th most educated state in the nation by credentials, has been identified as ranked 6 in declines in both reading and math scores, top 10 for bad scores, which many have reasonably associated with the government response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And how you may feel about this particular issue may depend upon whether or not you believe that the cancellation of in-person instruction was a necessary measure. And you may feel that in a cost-benefit analysis, which always sounds good, the closure of public schools had netted, net, a more positive outcome. However, many said that in the pandemic, that I'm not saying that they're lying, they had said that they had been following the science. And if, as you say, you had been following the science, a reasonable question would be whether you could empirically support your opinion like a scientist would be expected to do with quantifiable metrics. While the former Virginia governor, upon the report of only 45 cases and 1 fatality, began his COVID-19 response by canceling all non-essential social gatherings of 100 or more on March 15, 2020. The public schools of Arlington and Alexandria had independently made the decision to extend the spring vacation indefinitely 1 day before Dr. Ralph Northam had done so. But they only stated that they were acting in an abundance of caution, which may have resonated with many in times historically associated with fear, confusion, and despair. However, again, as a scientist, thinking as a scientist, one would reasonably want to establish some empirical evidence to support that conclusion. And we are fortunate, very fortunate, because we actually have some pretty good numbers with which to play and make this little game a whole lot of fun for the whole family. But first, let's do a little practice test, shall we, boys and girls? How can I put this nicely? Well, just like there are really great cars that everyone wants to have in their garage, there are some others that are not quite so great, shall we say, and are just good ground transportation, and hopefully reliably so. There is some really great colleges that are rather difficult to get into, and you may have heard of a few. And there are some others that are, shall we say, not quite so hard to get into. For example, boys and girls, has everyone here heard of Harvard University? It's okay if you haven't. Well, only 5% of the kids who even apply to Harvard will attend Harvard. And how about a school like Virginia's pandemic response partner, VCU? Well, about 90% of kids who apply to VCU can expect to receive an acceptance letter. And with no judgments, which of these would you say, 90 or 5, was a better, or let's say more competitive college? Which one is going to take a little more effort to get into? Harvard or VCU? And we can use this example for what teachers and administrators who have gone to college and want more money had faced when they had decided to close schools at the beginning of the pandemic in an abundance of caution. Of course. Well, we could use Harvard as our example, but since VCU is a Virginia school, let's be proud and root for the home team, shall we, boys and girls? There were 2 very credible bookend studies for the first year of the pandemic, with one performed by the WHO, who declared the pandemic, and they performed that study in China, completed in late February 2020, which generally falls before March when they closed the schools. And the other was the largest trace contact study performed on the first variant, which was published in November, when many were doing their duty during the elections. Now, just think of the 90% of the kids who can attend VCU if they apply, and ponder that thought in your head for a little while. Well, according to these very credible studies, the people who could catch COVID-19 from anyone in the first year of the pandemic were half of the 10% who couldn't get into VCU. I want you to think about that. If you went to VCU, just think of how many people you know who couldn't get into VCU, and those are the people who were most likely to catch COVID-19. This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest.